Again, the first problem is the perspective. Do I want to see the top of the object, or the opposite? Do I want to see the bottom? I'll try to do a little side view, and what I'm doing is I'm using a white with because black creates so much contrast. If I sketch in white, I think it's very important to leave the pixels more than 3. Otherwise, like for example, this is not a good thickness for a line drawing. Check how much contrast it creates. So if I'm doing ideation, it's very important to stay super light and super thin. I'm going to sketch a typical cylindrical volume here that could end like this. A flying object could be something that has, I don't know, maybe a little wing here, another one in perspective on the other side, so something like this. There could be like a reverse wing like this, maybe a little bit more aggressive, so something like that. In perspective, I'm just going to do, there we go, and then maybe here in the center, I'm just going to sketch a wing like this, and in perspective, the other one that's going to go like this. If you see, I did a mistake because I forgot to make a new layer. If it would have been done on a different, so you know what I'm gonna do, I'll show you. This is a common mistake. I forgot to make a new layer with the lines. So how do I clean it up? There are two possible ways. Magic wand, clicking on the black, deleting. I have to adjust the tolerance. Let's see if I do 5, what happens. Not so great. And then I backspace, but yeah, I get some of the lines. Then I could keep doing it. That's one possibility. And also it creates some very nice artistic drawings, because if I now do solid white and I put it backwards, I think it's kind of nice. And it was done by accident. This shows you how powerful this program is for designers, in my opinion, because from mistakes there is always stuff that you can come up with. Actually, I'm gonna save it. I'm going to save it with print screen. Now I go back. And I do Control V, and I save this as my ideation sketch, because it would be cool to use it for presentation purposes. Now, how do I fix it? If I increase the contrast, I can still get a lot out of it, maximum brightness. And now what I can do select color range, touch the black, okay, and in theory it's going to take all the black pixels in theory. Backspace, new layer, I'm gonna fill it with black, and now I have it on a different layer, and I can do what I was supposed to do, double the layer and creating more. Well, before doing it, I'm going to increase the lightness, so image adjustment, hue and saturation, maximize the white. It's probably too thick, but basically I'm trying to get those lines out. I think they are okay like this. Okay, great. And now I'm keeping, of course, double. I am gonna name the layer as lines. And now I can keep working on my design. I need a cockpit somewhere, but before probably it's good to give it some sort of sections. I keep it simple. So in my opinion, a good section could be just a typical polygonal section like this. Remember, the sections have to be sketched in perspective. Here I'm assuming that it goes down like that, down, and then keeps going straight. The cockpit could be something like this, and I'm imagining a couple of seats here. Sphere, that's the helmet of the first pilot. Second seat, that's another helmet. I need to make sure that there is room for the legs, otherwise the sketch won't be believable. And probably this could be the front of the object. Maybe some textures here. You know, some typical couple of dots. Move, add, click on top, click and drag, something like that. It's an easy detail, super easy to be done. I could fix the section of the wings, imagining a real section. And I'm going to sketch another section here. So it's like the section of a drop. And speaking of sections, I am just going to bring this down, It has to go down here. Okay, I think we are at the end of the wing. Probably would be nice to create something that rolls up like that, which in perspective means that I'm expecting probably something like that. Okay, I am going to take the eraser because I need to get rid of those lines that are distracting. And also it helps to clean a little bit the sketch. But probably the eraser would be nice to be used with some opacity. So I always like to keep the mistakes or the construction lines. It helps to give some flavor. Okay, great. I think we have it. Probably what I haven't decided is where does this connect? And on the opposite side is the same thing. Okay, it's time to attempt a quick rendering. So I will be using paths all the time, and I need to figure it out. Probably also this line on the top is to be done better. Where is light source? I'm gonna put it at 45 degrees. Is it flying? Yes, I'll do it flying. So, but the shadow, I'm gonna do it at the very end. Great, so I'm gonna start with my paths. Pen tool, everything in the combine shapes mode, starting from the body of the airplane. I think the most important part of what I just did is these perspective lines. Those were the lines that were helping me to keep the object in perspective. If I didn't have those, I would have done probably a form that wouldn't have worked very well. What color should I use? I think with black, white always works. So I think we can just, first of all, make a new layer, and I call it rendering. And I'm going to keep it pretty light as this. And I think it's okay. I keep it, so it's basically light gray, maybe with the alt clicking on the black. I am going with my airbrush to round a little bit the bottom and round a little bit the other parts. And maybe I click gray again and I go back to the very end and I put some reflective light. So I achieved this result. I'm going to do the same thing here. Darken it up at the top with the same big airbrush. But then towards the end, I bring in some reflective light just to give it a little bit of volume. The next thing that I'm going to do, I sketch a nice selection, because according to my sections, this is not a cylinder. It's a form that looks more polygonal, more like it's a little bit more interesting. So on top of it, I just sketched a new selection. I'm going to fix it, turn it on, a little bit of feather to number 2, take the white, and now I'm going to bring this part out. It gets darker towards the front, but still I should have it. And here I leave the maximum amount of light. Like that. Now I'm going to work on the top. I'm going to make a new one. Click and drag on top. And I will stay not to the very end. I'll finish a little bit earlier because I check what happens here on the section. And I'm going to finish it here. Shift F6, number 2. There will be still some light entering the form. This little shadow kind of gives the idea that the section now is doing this, which I don't mind actually. I think is kind of nice. So I could do this. It happened a little by mistake, of course, but at this point, if I want to keep it, I could just add a little bit of shading like that. And on the opposite side, a little bit of white. And you will see that that is going to really come out. Okay. What about the bottom? The bottom, I kind of like it like that. I just add some extra values, just a little bit, maybe only here, just to make it a little bit more. I don't want to lose it completely, so I just do something like that. I think it looks more three-dimensional now. Great, I'm gonna work on the wings, new layer. There is a little bit of mess here, but I'll try to go on top. Always make sure that you're in the combine shapes mode, and I didn't close the layer properly. Okay, now I'm done it. Okay, great. Turn them on. What color? Well, it should be the same color. So again, it's a gray with light coming from the top. So I'm expecting this to be pretty light. But I'm gonna check this section, and it's kind of rounded. So probably even here it should be a little. It should be a little darker. And the same thing should happen here. Same problem. And the same problem on the back. This is rolling up, so cannot receive the same amount of light. So I just, and also this is facing down, so it should be a little darker. I think there should be more light here in particular, so I go back with some light values, and I do like that. I'm gonna work on these wings now. A couple of paths in the combine shapes mode. Turn them on. Again, brush, I'll click on the light gray. Lot of light here. If this is too dark, excuse me, too light, I'll click on this, darken it up. I think it's way better. I am going to roll this down a little bit. Great, rear wings. In the combine shapes mode, I'm going to sketch these two components. They look overlapping, so it might not come out great, but I'm gonna work on them, then we see what happens. Turn them on. This receives a lot of light, but this doesn't because it's facing down. So I have to set them up like this from the very beginning in order for this to be believable. If there is thickness, probably the edge is going to receive. I'm doing freehand a little bit of light value. Towards the back, a little bit of dark values. Airbrush, very thin. Darken it up, the thickness here. Same thing to the back, a little bit. Same thing on the top. Okay, great. Now, cockpit. New path. I am going to, first of all, sketch the overall area of the cockpit. Making sure that here I kind of follow that section. Now turn it on. I'm going to out-click on black, make a big airbrush. And for now I just do this so I can see what I'm doing. The next step, I'm going to improvise and try to sketch the negative space inside the cockpit that in theory shouldn't receive, like all the empty zones that should be black because they cannot receive light. Of course, I cannot know exactly what those areas are, but I'm literally improvising. Turn them on, black. So now I see the two passengers a little bit. Okay, great. I am going to now freehand with the lasso sketch this first form, sketch this second form. Airbrush, alt-click on gray. Two spheres. These are the seats. So I'm expecting these also something that potentially could receive. These are the arms. And probably there could be, I'm adding selection in the combine shapes mode, maybe a few details. The knee in here as well. And maybe a couple of panels here on the side of this. Shift F6, light gray, just a little bit. I'm exaggerating the amount of white with maybe another brush. I'm sketching with the lasso what's the shield of the helmet with something darker. Great, and maybe usually on this type of vehicles we expect to be something like that. I'm imagining maybe some shadow of these components on the back and some shadow of the helmets as well, and on the seat as well. Shift F6 on this black. Okay, that's the interior. It's time to... Okay, I'm almost done. I tried to finish real quick. Let's do the component. I'll do the glass at the very end. I'm gonna do this. Black. Maybe if I want to communicate that that this component comes out, I do inverse. A little bit of airbrush. And now Alt click on. No, I forgot to do it. You have to do it in a different layer. So new layer on top of this. So black for this. Now a little selection freehand. A little wider. Inverse. Airbrush. Select everything, click, Alt click. So they look like coming out. I could have done them just attached to the surface, but I think they kind of work. Okay, great. I think the lines are kind of distracting under here, so I'll just delete them a little bit. Glass. I'm gonna make a new layer and I call it the glass. Glass. So I am going to select what part of the object receives the biggest amount of light. I'm basically sketching now a reflection. Notice that I do not go at the end of the object because glass, there is always a cut line. So I have left some space. That's why I leave that space. Now turn it on. Solid white. No feather. Very big airbrush. And now I'm going to work on the top. Maybe improvising a reflection that could be again, even here, I do not go to the very end. I have to leave that little space. No feather, solid white. Okay. I can add a new layer on top and make highlights. And highlights, you know, here you can just have fun, but now I put some feather on this, just a little bit here. Not so sure I like it. I might stretch it. So I took the layer and did some transform. A couple of little things, some reflections, so new layer, no, shadows, I forgot the shadows. So this wing is going to cast a shadow that goes on top of this. There is a shadow under here always because the wing overlaps. There will be a shadow here. There will be, no, I think we are done with shadows, with casted shadows, so new layer shadows. Last, a little bit of feather, black, too big. I think this is a little too dark. It's better. Okay, great. I think we have all we need, maybe a couple of details. So, you know, usually aircrafts have these little things. So if the light comes from the top, this is going to receive light. Then it also creates a little reflection inside and a little shadow underneath. And these I can make a few copies. And maybe I put another one here, but just bigger. And maybe in this case, I have to rotate it. I'm missing the reflection though. Okay. There should be probably a reflection of this wing as well. And the reflection of this as well. So it is a little bit of feather. So the reflection of that becomes something like that. The reflection of this is darker. And probably this also creates a reflection here. Dark. Okay, great. Logos. We can attach things or we can just sketch. I like to keep it sort of freestyle, so I try to sketch the typical little flag, but I have to make sure that I make a new layer. So new layer, elliptical form, something like this, something like that. I'm gonna sketch an arrow here. Now I'm going to use the lasso, so in the combine shapes mode I'm just going to get this form right. I'm going to use this and this. Now I'll click on I'm going to fix it, the position, making a little bit bigger, making sure it follows the perspective. And maybe the same logo on the back, but in the correct perspective. So I think it should be better now. Maybe bigger. Gonna make it big. Okay, great. We are almost done. Just a couple of little things. I think it would be nice to see just a little bit of colors. Not much, but a couple of so it looks like there is something going on. So light red. Okay, I think we are done really. I might add just a section in the center to describe well what happens here. So a new layer, section lines. And maybe adding those little at the end, just to support my drawing, I can sketch some clouds. So the light is coming from here. So on top of everything, I could sketch some random forms. Here I'm gonna put some feather, like 10, go back to a brush. Then I've done them in the wrong layer, so new layer. Added it to some lines describing the exhaust. So a little bit of airbrush. And I can take these two things here. Now I show you another little thing that you can do. Filter, blur, motion blur. And now I modify the angle and I give those clouds the stretch of the motion. And that's, I think it's done.
That looks sick. Those clouds look awesome.
So what did I do here? Again, I've done lasso, some random brush. I was using this and I was just putting this into the lasso. Then what I did, but because it's everything in the same layer, so now with the lasso I select this and I select this, filter, blur, motion blur, and here I can choose the angle. Of course I have to use the angle that goes in the perspective with the motion, and I can reduce it, of course. Control D. Actually I can move, alt click, make a new one, and keep stretching it. Or reduce it like that. And I can take the eraser eventually and fix this part here. And if the object is flying, remember, I can always do inverse, Shift F6 to 5 on top of the clouds, a little bit of white, or it's too white. I should do it a little darker, but the idea is because I was in with 100%. Yeah. So that's the idea. Again, all the things that we do all the time, of course, a little bit of experience. So all these little things is because, of course, I've done thousands of times these things, but you see that it works. Interior. And then this, I can double click the layer, reduce the opacity if I want to see more the interior. But because there is an interior, that glass is believable. And what we did was reflections always follow the form. So I can add maybe another form, but if I add something, it has to follow. I cannot do a reflection like this. It doesn't make sense. I have to follow that surface. And now I can break it down. Probably a reflection here would consider the fact that there is the wing here being reflected. So probably something that I can do is this. Shift F6 to take white, it doesn't show very much, but doing this I'm basically putting white outside. So this is basically the reflection of this. That's another thing that, I mean, we could do.